Good morning, everyone. This is Nikachu, Merfolk Master, and we are here with day 91 of Coffee and MTG, the morning talk show, where, you know what? Let's go talk some magic. Let's discuss magic, all things happening in the Magic the Gathering world. Oh, you got questions? Oh, we got answers here. Either myself or the community have got them, and if you have deck lists that need reviewed, you need some feedback, how to help your mana curve, how to help your mana base, what creatures you're not thinking about that you need, and the spells that you need to beat the threats that you are losing against. Submit them here, and we are going to go over them. This is the morning talk show where wherever you are in the world, morning, afternoon, or evening, we brew up a cup of magic, and I got my coffee because that's the most magical thing for me, and we could discuss Magic the Gathering. I better start drinking this coffee. I've been under the weather for the last few days, but it's all good because the best thing for me is coffee and MTG. Good morning, Rugged MTG. Good morning, Uber Jam, Satamane, and Ugly Hoodrat. The single luckiest person to be picked for Decklist review, hands down. Basically, almost 100% win rate for getting selected at random. Good morning, Coda7913. Coffee is It is magic. Some would call it a drug. So, some governments and governing bodies would consider it a drug because it is. Dark coffee and French vanilla cream sounds delicious. Yeah, totally a drug. That's the magic of coffee right there. So yes, let us all discuss some magic. Still, Zendikar spoilers are getting spoiled as we speak. Who needs spoiler cards when you can just review them as they get released anyway? Let's see what the latest stuff is. I have not been looking at the newest spoilers at the moment. September 8th, today the 8th, and I'm sure cards are going to be spoiled as we speak. We've got Sizzling Barrage, 2-mana instant, deals 4 damage to target creature that blocked this turn. That sucks. That's too situational. Definitely not going to see play in any competitive format. It's mostly a limited card. Feladar Retreat. Ooh, is it the sequel to Feladar Guardian? So what is a Feladar? Or hold on, was there a Feladar, when we were talking about Feladar Guardian, was that around, yeah, I guess that could have been around the Zendikar era, so Feladar, I guess, Feladar is a Zendikar thing. Landfall, whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, choose one, create a 2/2 white cat beast creature token, or put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Those creatures gain vigilance until end of turn. That's actually pretty strong, but it's a 4-mana enchantment. But I mean, each fetch land can represent 4 power because you can put 2/2 white cat beast creature tokens in play. I don't know, interesting card. Probably is not still competitive, but it's pretty powerful even for 4 mana. Then Shadow's Verdict, 5 mana, exile all creatures and planeswalkers with converted mana cost 3 or less from the battlefield, and all creatures and planeswalker cards with converted mana cost 3 or less from all graveyards. It's interesting. So wipes out the battlefield and the graveyard. Oran Reef Ooze enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it. On target, enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on each attacking creature with +1/+1 counter on it. Meh. And this thing, 2 mana, 1/1 flying lifelink. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2. It gets bigger so if it can become a 6 mana 3/3 creature. Not particularly impressive. Oh, we got new negate art. That actually, the most exciting thing I'm seeing right now is new art for negate. Of all the things that I should be excited about, because you know what, negate has had a really lame art for an incredibly long time, and it was so boring. So the fact that we see a little bit a new negate is pretty good. Feladar is a cat with horns. All right. How's your viewership? How has your viewership changed due to your schedule swap? Hard to tell. Has not been a huge change so far. I would say I definitely have. I can't tell yet, but for the time being, I have less views during Coffee and MTG. But that might pick up as people get used to the new time. I'm getting a lot of people saying, "Oh yeah, I forgot there's a new time at once 11 o'clock rolls around. Oh, I missed the stream. I totally forgot that it's now at 9 o'clock." You got to remember, we now are doing this. The times have changed. Coffee and MTG is now from Monday to Friday at 9 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. If you want to see the show live, come over at twitch.tv/Nikachu MTG. I put this over here again. Very easy to find. Not hard to put in the URL in the browser. But yeah, we're doing this now at 9 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. If you want to know what that time is, just put in your time zone and then put 9 o'clock a.m. 9 o'clock CST into Google, into whatever your time zone is, and it'll give you the answer. Google's pretty smart about these things. And the streaming is now only... Oh, actually, okay, that's totally wrong. But the streaming is now only Mondays and Wednesdays following Coffee and MTG. Negate used to be a Merrill, though. I don't know what that is. Oh, a Merfolk. No, only in not the... I don't know about the OG one. Okay, I'll show you the one that's been printed like over and over and over again, like to death. Just to death. Now I think of it, they've actually printed a lot of... Okay, let's look at all the negates right now. Here's all... They actually... So for a long... So, okay, here is the negate that got really stale from Morningtide. I don't even know what's going on here. Does anyone even know what's going on here? It's just like, I see it's like some sort of flashy circular firework, but really I have no idea what's going on in the image. Then we got the Umbrella Jace. It's actually not a bad negate. It's actually a nice negate. I would own this in paper if I could. But then we just again and 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 again the same art for forever. Then we got a new one in Cons of Tarkir, but it wasn't even that good. Like, it was better than the... I don't know. It was different, but it was not... I wouldn't say it was better than the original. And then we got a Merfolk negate. No, this is the one that's probably being discussed here. Only one copy of negate was... Maybe there's more than one copy of negate that's a Merfolk. Then they reprinted here this old... I mean, it was immediately old and stale at the beginning. I hated this negate. Oh yeah, and there's this one. This Merfolk isn't it? This is a Merfolk negate. We have two Merfolk negates. Given a lot of negates to Merfolk. Then there's this ugly Vidalcan one. This Jace one is okay, I guess. Then they reprinted the Merfolk negate. And then we have a new negate. I would say these last two are actually quite good. I'm quite satisfied with this Merfolk negate and also this... I don't know who this is here in the new negate, but looks good. Looks good. Good morning, internet is fixed. The only reason I wake up early. There we go. You have to be here for Coffee and MTG, just like 5x5. Always here for Coffee and MTG. Did you talk about the new Death Shadow yet? And how does Wizards of the Coast know how to make symmetrical cards? They just choose not to everywhere else. Yeah, we talked about it yesterday. So for the most part, is this it? Oh, hold on, let me look for it. Because it was just recent. I know it was like a 2-mana. It was a 2-mana one. Scourge of the Skyclaves, I believe. Yeah. I'll just go briefly over this because we talked about this the other day. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. You have to you have to deal damage to your opponent and to yourself, so it's not going to be the same as Death Shadow, that's for sure. Because my life total is at a healthy 20 when I'm playing against Death Shadow, and then all of a sudden they're at like 6 and they play this enormous 7/7 Death Shadow, and then I start dying. But this demands that your opponent's life total goes down as well, because if I'm at a healthy 20 life, then you lose all the life you want. This is gonna be hard to activate. But it is an interesting card in that it's like the kicker is really expensive. Ooh, what's going on here? As my mouse scrolls over it. Anyway, the kicker is very expensive, but it's actually pretty good because then it'll immediately make it good. And Death Shadow can go into the late game, like as any. It's not a control deck, but it can take a control route. We'll see. It's potentially modern playable. And you don't need your opponent's life total go down that much. I mean, it can go. Your opponent just needs to lose 1 life for it to be relevant. So your opponent goes down to 19. Boom! You can play Scourge of the Skyclaves immediately, and then this damage can start snowballing like crazy. But if your opponent just sits pretty at 20, this deck actually might have some difficulty getting off the ground. Now, to answer your second part of the question, and how Wizards of the Coast does know how to make a symmetrical cards. They just choose not to everywhere else. Oh yes, so this card, it has a symmetrical effect. Well, I don't know. They're trying to fix Death Shadow, I guess. That's the idea. They realize Death Shadow is pretty damn good. It sees competitive modern play. So the only way to fix that effect, like this is an evolution of a card they've already made. A lot of these new cards that they're making, they're just brand new. They have no idea what the influence is. And of course, they should be making more symmetrical cards instead of these one-sided things. So anyway, this is a fix to Death Shadow is essentially what I'm staring at here. So far, nothing in Zendikar Rising excites me for Modern. Lands seem trash. Some of the cards is just a bad version of certain cards that we currently have. Thoughts? Well, you know what? So here's the thing, Ty Ice T. A long time ago, like we're talking like way back in the day, there might be only one card that breaks out into Modern per set, and there would be nothing else. And I think for the most part, these sets should be are really focusing on Pioneer and are adding new cards to Pioneer, particularly the mana base. Like the mana bases in Pioneer are real trash. So the fact that we now have these new dual lands, these flip lands, is going to be a huge boost to Pioneer. Because, okay, so the alternative is that Wizards prints really powerful cards to guarantee themselves into Modern. But on the other hand, people hate that. Like a lot of people hate how because if you need to, it's hard to break the threshold of what gets playable in Modern unless you go down the fire design route where, okay, now everything is getting played in Modern, but only because it's so ridiculously powerful. So anyway, I am the type of person that likes Modern shaken up constantly, but I've now, over a lot of experience and observed and analyzed Modern for so many years, I definitely can conclude that most people would prefer that very few cards break into Modern. As much as we want something for ourselves every set, it is actually better off for like the format as a whole. I think that Modern moves very slowly and changes very slowly, both in cards entering and cards getting banned. Because otherwise cards are just getting like banned constantly at this point, which a lot of people also hate. Now, I can't say that Modern is like tanking in popularity because of how it's being managed right now, because Modern is still very popular. You're still getting well over 1,000 people playing in leagues online. Popularity for Modern is very healthy, even given the state of the format. So as much as people always complain about Modern anyway, even during the Splinter Twin era. Ban Splinter Twin! Splinter Twin gets banned. Unban Splinter Twin! Can't make everybody happy. Very political format. Salmon of No Doubt just subscribed for 2 months. Hey, Nikachu, have a great stream. Thank you very much. I will, Salmon of No Doubt. And also, Mike the Mailman subscribed yesterday and said, I watch you more than Netflix. You deserve this sub. Thank you very much, Mike the Mailman. I missed the note. Is that Silvergill in the Ixalan negate? Maybe. Maybe. Honestly, I never thought about that. So here's here's a Merfolk here. Is it the Silvergill Adapt? I tend to say yes. That's Silvergill Adept. I leave the judgment to everybody else. As far as I'm concerned. I never caught that. I never caught that. I didn't even think for a second. At least in my mind, for me, Silvergill Adept is this Silvergill Adept, the one in the middle here. You know, for me, this is the one that's canon in my mind. I don't use this Silvergill Adept, but now that I look at it, I mean, this is it. Yeah. Silvergill Adept is negate. Silvergill Adept, there should be a Silvergill Adept well, I guess this is the Silvergill Adept counterspell. But Silvergill, they should have an evolution of the counters of Silvergill Adept where enters the battlefield, draws a card, and maybe counters a spell for 1 extra mana. Or you have to reveal 2 Merfolk cards, counter targets, it has flash, counter target spell, and draw a card. How about that? That would be restrictive. You have to show 2 Merfolk in the late game. It's not a counterspell anymore. Anyway, interesting to think about. Death Shadow, no, that. Not the most catchy name, no. Death Shadow, no, that's catchy. Most decks do self-damage, so it probably doesn't die immediately. So when we're talking about this new Scourge-Clave thing, yeah, most decks do damage. Well, we'll see. I mean, if this card ends up being like really good, people will be a lot more cautious about that. Or maybe not, I don't know. People don't seem to be more cautious about Blood Moon. They just decide not to play the deck anymore. They'll play some other deck that is not as weak to Blood Moon. Have you seen the green DMC mythic yet? Apparently Amulet players are brewing with it. Are you talking about Timber Symbiosis? I don't know what DMC means. I'm assuming this is, are you talking about this? Look at top 7 cards of your library. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield. If that creature card has converted mana cost 3 or less, it enters the battlefield with a bunch of +1/+1 counters. This card looks like absolute trash to me. This card looks like it will see no play. I don't know why Amulet players would want this. This looks terrible. You're not guaranteed to find what you want to find. I mean, you can just easily find a gigantic Dryad of the Elysian Grove. But at 7 mana, that's not what you want to do with the deck. But whatever. I saw some comments about. I don't know if that's the card that you're talking about, but that was a card that I saw Amulet players talking about. I'm like, well, whatever. They know their deck better than I do, so good luck to them. JZ1 says, my first thought is that Death Shadow decks would prefer other threats like Tarmogoyf or Gurmag Angler that don't depend on getting the opponent's life total down so they can get a threat on the table a bit earlier. But both Tarmogoyf and Gurmag Angler have trade-offs. For example, let's say Graveyard Hate is really high in the metagame, then Tarmogoyf and Gurmag Angler are worse because it's going to be really hard to cast Gurmag. Let's say Rest in Peace is like the card of the metagame right now. Tarmogoyf is a 0/1 creature that is never getting bigger, and Gurmag Angler is going to be incredibly difficult to cast because your graveyard will never let you delve. So there is definitely a place for another card that hedges against Graveyard Hate. To be honest, there's not that much Graveyard Hate right now, but I'm just saying that there is room situationally for a card that does not depend on Graveyard Hate. Not to mention, like, maybe Rakdos Burn would play something like this because they can take enough damage. Like, we don't even know where the best card, going back to that Scourge of the Skyclaves, we don't even know what like the best shell for this card is. It could even be for Burn that can reliably deal enough damage to themselves, both with like Eidolon of the Great. Well, I don't know if probably this will kick out Eidolon of the Great Revel or not. I don't know. But they like deal a lot of damage to the opponent. They can fetch shock. They can deal damage to themselves with Horizon lands. So it's not clear that this is a Death Shadow card. This could be like a card that goes into Burn, and it's immediately just a giant creature. And yeah, it could be a new card for the Suicide Zoo list. Like definitely we could see a new evolution. Like that was originally what Death Shadow was. It was just called it was called Suicide Zoo. They got rid of the suicide part because not a pleasant name in 2020. So anyway, it was renamed to Death Shadow Zoo, and that was originally played with Gitaxian Probe. And after Gitaxian Probe got banned, people just sort of scrapped the deck and then created what Death Shadow is today with Tarmogoyf and Tarmogoyf Traverse, but then it also evolved into the Grixis Shadow deck that we all know today. But the point is, like, this may, like, if it may not go directly into like a Grixis Shadow, there are other Death Shadow like decks that this might be a better fit for. So a lot of great conversation already. It's very early in the morning, as a morning show is supposed to be. As a morning show is supposed to be. Has Thieving Skydiver been discussed? I feel like it's pretty good. Yes, we have discussed it. I'll have a more dedicated video about this card. I will say something that I have not mentioned. I'll say something that I might not have mentioned yet. My greatest concern about this card is that we're not the best deck that plays this card. There's nothing on this card that says this card has to be played in that can only be played in a Merfolk deck. This card actually says any deck playing blue can play this card, and actually it's not even that restrictive. The kicker is colorless, costs 1 blue. Any control deck can play this. And I'll tell you why this is dangerous. Like, let's say, like I'm scared random decks will steal our Ether Vial is like one problem. And also the fact that it's a Merfolk means we'll help it with our Lord of Atlantis. Also, it can just be randomly always on defense to threaten to block something. Yeah, it could steal our Smuggler's Copter. We have, like, the Merfolk toolbox has enough artifacts that they could be used more against us than it will be used against other decks. So we have to hope, like, this is definitely a toolbox card, but we have to hope that this is going to be more exclusive to our deck than it is to other decks. Is my problem. Like, what if Urza becomes like a really popular deck? Then this might be like a sideboard card against them, because you can, like, theoretically steal their, like, construct token, you know? Play Thieving Skydiver for 3, steal their construct token. Now you have, like, more permanence than them. Anyway, I'm just throwing that out there. It's possible that Thieving Skydiver might end up fitting better in another deck that has more mana than us and be used against us more than we can use it against other decks. That's my only concern, because it's a really bad card against Ensnaring Bridge. I know people have brought up, well, you steal the Ensnaring Bridge, then you can just accumulate cards in your hand and then attack. That your opponent could just play a second bridge. It's not a big deal. I mean, there are advantages to this, but my concern is it's going to be played in other decks. Satamane, what's your favorite non-Merfolk card with Merfolk in the artwork? I love Hadana's Climb personally. I didn't even know there was a Merfolk in this art. Hadana's Climb. The beginning of combat, on your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Then if that creature has 3 or more counters on it, transform Hadana's Climb. So, my favorite... Oh, what is it? I definitely have one, but I thinking about it on the spot is very difficult. Okay, what does everyone else like? Maybe someone will mention mine if anyone has it in the comment section. There we go. The counterspell from Masks. You nailed it for me, Quantum Bird. Yes, I love it. So I have it right here. I don't even have to look it up. I have it on my desk. So, I mean, I was thinking about this. Like, if Counterspell gets reprinted in Modern Horizons 2, I'm definitely going to go all in on the Masks block Counterspell. Okay, so it's a little bit fuzzy. Let's get the real one. I really like it. I mean, it's super nostalgic for me. Oh, beautiful. Look how good that is. So nice. Looks really good in foil. Really nice in foil. Flavor text is nice too. Yes, your attack has been rendered harmless. It is, however, quite pretty. The Saprazans. You know what we need? We need to go back to Masks block. We need to return to Masks block. We're there. There are merfolk there. We got to go back to Masks block. That's what we could. That could be a new set. Back to or making it back to Masks block. I don't know. Tuxdev has the JVC counter spells. Where are the Phyrexian merfolk? Yeah, well, yeah, actually. We could use some Phyrexian merfolk, although they'll never bring the Phyrexian mana back. Wasn't Mask one of the most underpowered blocks ever? Well, yes. Especially given the time period, because like Mask's block just came after the Urza block, and the Urza block at the time was like the modern day. It's like what Throne of Eldraine and War of the Spark is for us today was like Urza's block back then, where like the decks were just completely, they were more broken back then. Back then, I think there were literally turn 2 decks in existence because they had access to a bunch of artifact mana and Tolarian Academy and Voltaic Key, which untapped artifacts, and there were infinite mana combos. So yeah, there was literally like turn 2 decks back then. Which we don't have. Yeah, Urza's block is the most busted block ever. So they like, whoa, we gotta slow things down. And they went, yeah, they slowed it down to a standstill. But I have to say, like, I played Standard. I don't know if it was I don't know if Standard was in good shape by today's terms. But I mean, I played Masks block, Invasion block Standard, and it was good. It was good. I don't know what it was like before that. But whatever, like, if you power down the sets immediately, eventually everything will figure itself out. Yeah, return to Mercadia. Gotta return to Mercadia for those sweet merfolk cards. Okay, I'm still gonna, okay, so I have to make sure that these Coffee and MTGs are within an hour now, because I will definitely have classes. I don't have my first class today, but I'm gonna start having classes on Tuesdays and Thursdays. So I'm going to still answer questions for the next little while, but if you want, you can start getting your deck reviews submitted. Make sure you go ! deck review space, then give the URL to your deck list and leave any comments. Helps me to let me know what format. Are you a budget deck, and what are you trying to beat, or what's unclear in your list that you need some help with. So you can start submitting those deck lists, and while you do, I'll still answer questions and I'll still have discussion. What is this? Is this viable in Dredge? Skyclave Shade? Probably not. Dredge has a problem these days in that they have so many good cards. Oops. They have so many good cards, it's really hard to fit new ones in. So I think Sodex says something about this. 2 mana, 3/1, count block. If it was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2/2. Whatever, the counters. Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, if Skyclave Shade is in your graveyard and it's your turn, you may cast it from your graveyard this turn. So no, I mean, you have to pay mana for this. The whole point of Dredge is to not pay mana. They don't want to pay. They want to cheat. Dredge is not trying to do anything fair. They don't spend mana to cast my spells, to cast my creatures. What are you, nuts? That is not what Dredge players do. This creature is unplayable. You have to spend mana on it in order to cast it and put it on the battlefield. We're not doing that. Could you not place a land on what? Take more times. Could you not place a land on enemy turn? It's asking if it's your turn. If it says if a land enters the battlefield in your control, if Skyclave Shade is in your graveyard and it's your turn, you may cast it from your graveyard this turn. So it's not, this effect does not affect the opponent on any turn outside of your turn. Yeah, only works on your turn. Either way, like, they're tapped out all the time playing Cathartic Reunion, Conflagrate. Like, they don't have a whole lot of mana. Even if you could play it on the opponent's turn, it's just very unlikely to happen. And remember, for anyone who's new to Coffee and MTG, it helps me find your questions or comments if you go 3 question marks before the question, 3 question marks after the question, or go at Nikachu MTG. Helps me find your questions in the sea of comments, but I just recognized this one because I saw the word masks in it. High Tide or Counterspell from Masks. I don't think there was High Tide in Masks block. There was Counterspell, though. Oh, you're talking about what's the best art with a merfolk on it? Because there's a lot of art. So Niels Nielsen was like Ponder. Ponder is actually pretty decent, too. I have nothing against the merfolk Ponder art. Good old Lorwyn. First showing of Ponder. Yeah, when you Ponder, it's really a merfolk card, if anything else. If nothing else, it's a merfolk. Some of these comments I do not... I don't know what the context is for anymore. Thieving Skydiver attaches the stolen equipment to your creature. However, normally if an equipped equipment changes controllers, it doesn't fall off. Interesting. Do I want Rebels back too? Well, they could. Rebels would be interesting today because back then, the Legend rule made it. Like, so if anyone doesn't know, okay, so I'll get like Lynn Civvy here. This is really for the old school players. Oops. This is for the super old school players. So back then there was an archetype called Rebels, where it was just creatures that tutored for other creatures. That was the whole archetype, and they slowly tutor for more and more creatures, and you have a big board and you attack your opponent. So it was a legitimate archetype. The problem with this archetype that made it sort of frustrating at the time was Lynn Civvy Defiant Hero, which there used to be, like, there was a restriction on all these rebels. You could only look for a creature so big, like per converted mana cost. Lynn Civvy says, put target rebel card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library, and you can search your library for a rebel card with converted mana cost X or less and put it onto the battlefield. So Lynn Civvy was the mirror breaker, that basically all the rebels. You could search for any rebel in your deck. The problem is this was a legendary creature, and back then, whoever got Lynn Civvy on the battlefield first, that was it. Okay, I have Lynn Civvy. You're not allowed to have a Lynn Civvy. That was the, if you try to play a Lynn Civvy, what was the? I think the rule was you are not allowed to have, whoever had the first Lynn Civvy just won, basically got it, and then the opponent could not have a Lynn Civvy on the battlefield for whatever reason. So that made this archetype miserable in the mirror because whoever got Lynn Civvy out first basically won. What's a lot of the old legend rules were just like crazy. Yeah, legendary. There can only be one. The current legend rule is not very flavorful, but I think it is best for gameplay. Although I would prefer that they went back to the old Planeswalker rule where you can have like only one Jace out in play. You can have only one Teferi in play. You can have only, like, I am not really thrilled with 3 Lilianas on the battlefield, or 4, like 3 or even 2 Teferis at this moment. But the point is, like, the old legendary rules were just stupid. So back then the rebel matchup was dumb, because whoever got Lynn Civvy just basically won on the spot. But if you played with the new legend rule and you had both players were allowed to have a Lynn Civvy, then now it could be a completely different story, and maybe that would be a much more interesting archetype. Look at that, we have support for going back to Masks Block. We got to return to Masks Block. Return to the Saprazan time. Reprint Rishadan Port in Standard. Probably wouldn't go over very well. All right, so let's move on to the second half of the show where we do deck reviews. And you are all picked at random, by the way. I should explain that. The point of that exclamation point deck review thing is that you are you're now eligible to be randomly drawn by the bot. So light deck list has been chosen. Casual, modern, kind of jank. Maybe can compete, probably not. The spoiler page, easy to read. How do you think it can improve? Let's go for it. We got to, oops. Do I have to zoom out here? Maybe a little bit. Okay, hold on. Actually, before we get into this, before we get into deck list review, definitely would love to thank my sponsors, starting with themanabase.com, your home base for everything Magic the Gathering. And the Manabase is sponsored by Fusion Gaming Online, which is my favorite local game store. And their deal of the week is 20% off from the Vault singles and sealed products. So go check that out if you are interested in something from the Vault. You can see there's things like Grove of the Burning Wills and Aether Vial, Delver of Secrets. I think the most important ones are like Jace the Mind Sculptor and Ether Vial. Remember, Canadian prices, the prices might look high, but they're Canadian, so please do the conversions. And also, we're going to thank Mana Traders. The Mana Traders is the premier place to rent Magic cards online to help you play any deck in any format, anytime. And you can support the channel by using my Mana Traders link in the description below, or you can get 20% off your first 3 months by using my coupon code Nikachu. So we're going to thank Mana Traders for being our sponsor. And then with that, let us get into the deck. So what do we got? We got Curious Homunculus. Jeez, this is not one of the. It's not one of the greatest deck review sites to review. Can't see these cards very well. Okay, when do we can see the cards? All right, Curious Homunculus. This is like add color, spend this mana only cast instant or sorcery spells. And it's a double-sided card. Turns into Voracious Reader. Has prowess, 3/4 creature. Instant sorcery spells. It turns into like a beefy prowess Goblin Electromancer. At the beginning of your upkeep, if there are 3 or more instant sorcery cards in the graveyard, all right, that's fine. Dream Twist. Target player mills 3 cards. Glimpse the Unthinkable. Iona in your Glimpse deck, or are you? Okay, hold on. Okay, Iona, Remand, Resurrection, 4 mana, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Sunken Ruins, Thought Scour, Tomb Scour, Visions of Beyond, Zombify. Well, you're missing like a really important card in this deck, and that's called what's that Reanimator call? What's the flashback Reanimator spell? Unburial Rites, yeah. You're already Esper, so you might as well play this card. It's 5 mana sorcery. Return target creature card from your from your graveyard to the battlefield. But it has flashback, so you can actually have both sides of this card. You can cast it for 5 mana, or you can cast it for 4. The flashback is just a white and 3 generic, so you have a few more flashback cards. So that's definitely just a superior version of this card, in my opinion, because it looks like you're going to mill yourself by a decent chunk anyway with Glimpse the Unthinkable and Dream Twist. Target player puts the top 3 cards of your library into the graveyard. Flashback. Remand. Is there a better card than Remand? Like maybe a counter spell that like mills yourself? Thought Scour, Tomb Scour. It's got to be like... Okay, hold on. Tomb Scour, Visions of Beyond, and Zombify. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. So you seem to be all in on Iona. Iona's fine, but legendary. I don't think Iona is going to win the game by itself. I might look into like another creature that you might want to have in here. Like, is there? What are the other good graveyard Reanimator cards are there? You should probably have 4 more creatures. Yeah, I can definitely get behind that. Instead of Curious Homunculus, you should have Hedgehog Crab in this deck, which as you play lands, you can just mill yourself easily. I actually don't see the point of this card. You are strictly a Reanimator deck. I mean, this is all you're purely a Reanimator deck, and this card like has no. I mean, I guess the idea is if you flip it, your spells are cheaper, but it's not worth it. You might as well play Baral in the first place if you want that sort of effect. So you can have Baral, which actually is not bad, actually. Do you know what? This is a combo deck, and you might want to shave some mana. So Baral, Chief of Compliance, is what you want. It's just like much better. Well, who cares if... Yeah, that's fine. You're not going to stack... I very highly doubt that you're going to have multiples of Curious Homunculus on the battlefield. This legendary creature is totally fine. It will do what you want it to do, is the point. And you don't have to work hard to... well, I mean, I understand you're probably not going to work too hard to flip the human homunculus, but... well, what can I say? I think Baral is just strictly better. It's just a strictly better card. Was this also this is a 1/1, so it doesn't even block very well. You can at least block Goblin Guides and some other puny stuff with this creature. So you have to work to get this thing online. No work to get this thing online. Already, like, look at it this way. You could Tomb Scour. You have more turn 3 combos with Baral than you do with the Homunculus. So you can go turn 1 Thought Scour, put the even Tomb Scour, put Unburial Rites and Iona in the graveyard. Turn 2 Baral, turn 3 Unburial Rites. So you have Unburial Rites and Iona in the graveyard. Turn 3, you're comboing off. The earliest you're going to combo off with your deck is basically by turn 4, because you have you get Curious. Oh, hold on. Okay, so you could, in theory, also do the same thing, but you need, with your Tomb Scour, you have to have, what's it called? You need 3 or more instants or sorceries in your graveyard. So your Tomb Scour has to hit 3 or more, in addition to Iona. In addition, so it needs to be, so you need to have a very good Tomb Scour. And then on turn 3, this thing will flip. And then you can you can do your thing. You can basically play Zombify or whatever and all this other stuff. But anyway, I still believe that Baral is the way more consistent card that you want in your deck. Not to mention that you're already playing Remand, and Remand will allow you to discard cards from your hand. So whenever you counter a spell, you can draw a card and discard a card. That allows you to get rid of Ionas that are in your hand that you need in your graveyard. What else do you have? Why is Sunken Runes up here? Wow, deckstats.net is really messed up when it comes to... So your mana base definitely could be better, but I think you probably know that these are... I'm sure this is to some extent like... what's it called? On a budget, you have a budget mana base. Sideboard, again, the Curious Homunculus, Disenchant, strategic planning. I'm just trying to think of what other Reanimator creature that you could play in this deck, because I think you're all in on Iona, and at the very least you should have maybe another one in here. Because if someone, for example, another suggestion is you need to diversify your win conditions. At least have a second one or have multiples in the sideboard. Because if anyone, for example, surgical extracts your Iona, you're dead. I mean, you're just dead. You're not going to win. I don't even think you're going to win with the Curious Homunculus. Unless you really think you can win with this card. I mean, it does have prowess, but it's just easy to kill. I highly doubt that this card is going to carry you to victory in this deck. And I can only imagine that is there not better cards than Tomb Scour? Well, you got Thought Scour. Okay, that's a good one. Are there any better self-mill cards? Puts the top 3 cards of their library into the graveyard, has flashback, but doesn't draw a card. Glimpse the Unthinkable is not bad because it's 10 cards. That's a lot. Stitcher Supplier is okay, but I think we got to go deeper with this deck. I mean, maybe this is it. Maybe Tomb Scour is the way to go. There's just nothing else you could do. It's what other cards to reanimate are there? There's I was thinking of not Iona, Elish Norn. This card, oops. I'll just get Elsh. Or is it Elish? How do I spell it? Okay, Norn. There we go. Oh, it's Elish. Yeah, it is Elish Norn. Okay, so Elish Norn Grand Cenobite could be one part of your Reanimator package, because it'll just wipe out tribal decks, wipe out any decks that have smaller creatures. Elish Norn is definitely a very good creature to have in your Reanimator toolbox. What else is there? And I think you should have more Reanimator targets. I think this deck is actually really good at putting dumping stuff in the graveyard and then reanimating it relatively quickly. And also, you might want to consider having a card called to defeat counter spells. What's it called? Boseiju. Boseiju who shelters all. You'll pay some life, but against like the control decks, sorry, not yeah, against control decks with counter spells, you don't have a damn chance of winning this game. So you should at least use Boseiju to give you some ability of beating, give you some chance of beating the counter spells when you use your reanimation targets. Stream of Thought. Ooh, remember this has a pretty picture. It does. Target player puts top 4 cards of their library into their graveyard. You shuffle up to 4 cards from your graveyard into your library. Is that a good effect? I don't actually think you want this card. Whoops. I don't know if you want this card in the deck, because you have to, like, let's say, oh, it says up to shuffle up to 4 cards. Is that better than Tomb Scout? Replicate. When you cast the spell, copy it for each time you paid the replicate cost. I think at 5 mana, that's pointless at this point. Top 5. This goes a little bit deeper. Top 3 cards. This thing has flashback. So that's 6 cards for 3 mana. It's close. It's close. I don't think it's enough. I'm considering Surveils. I would definitely, if there's a Surveil counterspell, I would definitely play it. Oh, that's a pretty neat suggestion. I don't know. Actually, Fact or Fiction might be a decent card in this deck, actually. Well, hold on. No, wait a minute. We should actually, instead of Fact or, if we can play Fact or Fiction, we can play, what's it called? What's it called? We can play Gifts Ungiven. No, we should. This is actually probably the best card that we can play. So Fact or Fiction, because yeah, Gifts Ungiven is the superior card in this sort of deck. So now we're just building an actual Reanimator deck after all of this. So the point of this, so here's the important part. Here's the important synergy you need to understand with Gifts Ungiven. Search your library for up to 4 cards with different names. Reveal them. Up to 4 cards with different names, and reveal them. Target opponent chooses 2 of those cards, put the chosen cards into your graveyard and the rest into your hand, then shuffle your library. So here's the deal. You play Gifts Ungiven, and you only pick 2 cards. One of those cards is Unburial Rites. The other one is the creature you're going to reanimate, in this case, Iona. And then what you do, and then they have to choose the 2 cards. See, you can pick up to 2 cards, but your opponent has to choose 2. Those 2 cards go into the graveyard, and they have no choice. So this is a tutor for directly into your combo the very next turn. So this is the classic Reanimator combo for this deck. So this is definitely what this deck uses. So I would highly encourage you to include the Gifts Ungiven and the Unburial Rites engine, and I would also suggest that you, because we're running Gifts Ungiven, diversify the win conditions in your deck. Add maybe Elish Norn. I don't know what other big baddie fatties that you would want to use. I don't know if Grizzlebrand works in this deck. I'm not too sure. But the point is, diversify it so that you have like a toolbox almost to win with when you combo off. So and make sure it's a creature that doesn't shuffle your graveyard into your library like Emrakul. So don't do that one. So anyway, thank you very much for the deck list, and I hope that was some useful feedback to help make this sort of self-mill / reanimator package work. And good luck with that. So all right, so let's get on with another list. Hope that was some useful stuff, Light. Deck review. Pick. Okay, is there a spoiler? Mathematic, check the spoiler. Something new? New spoilers came out. Is it like unbelievably good? Is there like an amazing merfolk? It's deck review time, people. Okay, so we got Master. Okay, hold on. Let's look at Glass Pool Mimic. Enters the battlefield taps. So we got a blue. Okay, I'm a little excited for a blue land. You may have Glasspool Mimic enter the battlefield as a copy of a creature you control, except it's a shapeshifter rogue in addition to its other types at 3 mana. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Now that's a card. Now that there is a card. That is very interesting. I like it. I like this card. I do like this card a lot. And it can definitely copy, I mean, like as a Merfolk player, it definitely can copy Lords. We've seen the uncommon version, that's just the front half. Huh? Yeah, well, the point is, yeah, we have a land when we have nothing to do, and that is the most important thing. This is definitely useful. Unfortunately, it's only a copy of a creature you control, so it's not a copy of a creature your opponents control, which is a bit crummy. Okay, so very interesting. We'll go deeper on that tomorrow. Definitely interested in this card. Merfolk is definitely interested in copying their own stuff, and we have Master of Winds. Flying 1/4 creature, well, that's not interesting. Master of Winds enters the battlefield, draw 2 cards, and then discard a card. Whenever you cast an instant, sorcery, or wizard spell, you may have Master of Winds base power and toughness become 1/4 or 1/3 until end of turn. Not interesting. I don't really care. Probably is going to be good in standard. Soaring Thought Thief. Flash flying. As long as an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, rogues you control get +1/+0 whenever one or more of your rogues attacks. It's like you have to have your opponent mill enough. Not interesting. All right, let's get back to deck list review time. All right, so what is the deal here? 4 dogs in a horseshoe suit. Deck list has been chosen. A monstrosity based around Torpor Orb and Kroza. I don't even know what Kroza is. I know what Torpor Orb is. Hold on, there seems to be other spoilers people are talking about. Something about maddening something. Oh, people are talking. Oh, just as okay, so just as there's the new card that just came out that also might be good. Well, I don't know if this is that good in the deck in the past deck that we just talked about, but maddening cacophony. Each opponent mills 8 cards. No, hold on. This is not good. I don't know why people are suggesting this card because it's a self-mill deck. It's not an actual mill deck on the opponent. Okay, moving on. 4 dogs. I'm trying to find it back in the Twitch chat. Where is? Okay, found it. I'll look at the mana base later. So we got Fatal Push, Lightning Bolt, Inquisition, Thoughtseize, Unearth, Mishra's Bauble, Sundial of the Infinite. End the turn. Activate this ability only during your turn, though. Okay. Torpor Orb. Creatures entering the battlefield don't cause abilities to trigger. So the idea is you want to go turn 2 Torpor Orb, and you're going to put, like, Croxes and stuff like that into play. So Hunted Horror, trample when Hunted Horror comes into play, put 2 3/3 green centaur creature tokens with protection from black into play under target opponent's control. Aha! Actually, this is not a bad idea. But you need Torpor Orb, because if you don't have Torpor Orb, you're in trouble. This is not that bad. Put 2 3/3, like it's not that bad. It still gets killed by Fatal Push, but aside from that, and then you have Crocs and you have Vexing Devil. Okay, so first off, I think you should go bigger than Vexing Devil. Vexing Devil is a pretty crappy creature to have in this deck. You should go much larger than this. And also, you should probably include green in this deck just so that you can play Well, I don't know if I think you have enough artifacts. You should try to include Ancient Stirrings. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you don't need Torpor Orb, and it's just gravy if you have it. But I would think that you want to consistently find. It's funny, you can use Companion. I guess so. Yeah. Everything's 2 mana or less. Funny enough. You might be able to play more creatures if you have green in here. I'm not too sure, but like Vexing Devil seems like a pretty crappy, useless creature in this deck. You certainly should be able to go like have more. Is there any like crazy ETBs that we can think of in this deck? Well, if you run the Karn, then you can't run Lurrus. I don't know if that matters, but you know, having Lurrus and recycling Mishra's Bauble is actually a pretty cool idea. So I'm going to assume, and Karn is slow, by the way. I think this deck wants to go turn 2 Torpor Orb, turn 3 Kroxa, and Hunted Horror, and then Bash Face. Well, Hushbringer requires splashing white, and I think that's a really big cost. And also, they're way more vulnerable. Eater of Days. All right, let's go check out Eater of Days. Because Vexing Devil is just too crappy for this deck. Flying Trample, when Eater of Days comes into play, skip your next 2 turns. I think the cost to this deck is too high. This card is too high. You skip your next 2 turns. It's not even that interesting of a card. It's just a 9/8 creature. Yeah, I mean, putting you're still sort of ahead if you play Kroxa, you don't need Torpor Orb. You can just play Kroxa and eventually escape the damn thing. You can also play the Horror for 2 mana. And okay, your opponent gets 2 creatures, but the 7/7 creature still trumps the 3/3s. So anyway, we need. I don't know if we need, but it would be ideal if there are more payoffs. Like I would say, you want 4 more payoff cards like this. I think the satisfaction of resolving Eater of Days against an opponent is well worth the risk. Like my biggest concern with this card is you cast it and your opponent goes like Abrupt Decay on your Torpor Orb, and then like, I'm screwed. I'm really doomed. 2 turns is too much. That's like drawing 2 cards, having 2 attacks. Skip your next 2 turns. That's a bit that price is way too high. The price is not very high with these 2 cards. So the Sundial works with them too. It also, oh yeah, do you know what? The Sundial does work, doesn't it? End the turn, activate this ability only during your turn. So Juan, what's the exile all spells and abilities on. Okay, I guess you don't need Ancient Stirrings. I'm going to take it back because between Torpor Orb and Sundial of the Infinite, you probably have enough. And the fact that you can go turn 2 Sundial of the Infinite and have 3 mana for these 2, I think is more than fine. Unearth seems fine. Thoughtseize seems... all this stuff seems okay. 21 lands, also good. Okay, hold on. You have 1 mountain. I guess that's good enough. You have a light white splash. So my only concern is you should have 12 threats to win the game. I think 8 is too low. You're gonna just find yourself like without a win condition too often. That's my only. And you have no way of like milling stuff into your graveyard. Like Unearth is not a threat. Unearth is just going to be a dead card in your hand. I mean, I know you can cycle it. But the point is, you need to find. So I mean, honestly, I think the deck is very unique. It's very original. It'd be nice if you had, honestly, like one of the best cards for this deck would be something like Faithless Looting to get rid of the old Sundial, the Infinites, and the extra Torpor Orbs. So maybe that's something you have to look for. What is like a card that can loot? Seal of Fire, Kaya's Ghost Form. I mean, in theory, I guess Lurrus is a win condition, but it's a pretty crappy one. So I have nothing against the sideboard. Deck is actually pretty clean and original. I have not talked about the new glass. I don't even know what Glass Pool Mimic is. So we have nothing else. No one else can suggest like a big beefy and like a creature on turn 2 that we can abuse. The clone that we just looked at, I don't think that's enough. I don't think that that's enough. I can't think of any, like, I don't look for these cards, so I don't know. Yeah, basically more threat. Yeah, just have, like, because even Death Shadow can sometimes have difficulty finding a threat, and but they have a lot of card draw and cycling to help find their stuff. So between Gurmag Angler, well, and even they have 4 Death Shadow, 4 Gurmag Angler, a few Snapcaster Mages, and a lot of card draw and cycling to help find their threats. So 8 is going to be too few. I mean, you're going to end up in a situation like Bogles where they have like they have 12 win conditions, 8 Bogles and 4 Core Spirit Dancer, and they still got a mulligan towards these cards. And you have less than that. You have 10. And Vexing Devil is a pretty crappy creature. I mean, you'll play it, it'll die, and then it's not a reliable win condition. So I would squeeze in 4 more big beefy Colossus Hammer. I think you're talking about just that. I think it's just the hammer, right? It's not a creature. Is it all one word? Everyone's like, do you see Glass Pool Mimic? Did you see Glass Pool Mimic? Okay. Anyway, that's my suggestion for the deck list. Add 4 more threats. Everything else looks really clean, and good luck with it. What is wrong with... Yes, we just talked about that. Glass Pool Mimic. And yes, it looks great. I'm going to... I'm very excited. I will play test this card in Merfolk, 100%. This card looks very, very good. It will be definitely much better in a more controlling, slower mono blue build, 100%. But it will definitely. I mean, I would almost say that like in a more slow, controlling tempo build, this is basically stock to the deck at this point immediately. So like a version that doesn't play Benthic, like any 1-drops, because our 1-drops are all trash. I think this is a fantastic card to include in the deck. And I could definitely play 4 of them in the deck. Damn it, missed the timing again. Yes, we 9 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time. That's how it is these days. Did you see Glass Pool Mimic? Who else is talking about Glass Pool Mimic? Did we talk about it already? Okay, let's talk about it some more. So, I mean, it's a clone, which for Merfolk, we definitely want. And this is specifically a Merfolk card. They're not giving this to Control. Control is going to look at this and say this is trash because, well, I don't know. Maybe they'll play it, but I doubt it because you can't fetch for it. You're weaker to Blood Moon if you run this thing. Land enters the battlefield tapped. What do you want to copy? Your Snapcaster Mage? You got to play this at sorcery speed. So for the most part, this is a nod to the Merfolk players, or like even just any blue X creature-based strategy. Could also be good for some sort of wizard deck, or I don't know. Maybe a blue-white Death and Taxes could play the same thing as well, or maybe not. I don't know. Anyway, blue creature decks definitely want to play this card. Nice art too, very, very beautiful. And because it's a land, you're free rolling on it. I would, if I were to play this card, I would definitely play 4 of them, or anywhere between 3 and 4. Very, very strong, and of course you can still Violet in play, not a problem there. And if you're playing, well, anyway, I really like this card. This actually is a pretty awesome card. Phantasmal Image is an effect that I like. Because it is additional, like this is like an additional Lord to our deck and doesn't take up any slots. It just makes our mana base a little bit more clunky. That's about it. If anything, this might help us encourage us go to 22 land, which will make our mana base like way more smooth, while we actually have a legitimate threat in our deck. So I think that this card is very, very cool. And the more I look at it, the more I'm enjoying staring at it. Morrow promised a 7/6 for 3 in the new set, so we'll see what happens. Yes, that's right. So look at the rest of the spoiler to see if you'll find your missing threat in this deck. Yes, it's a new land, which is also a shapeshifter. But you can only copy your own creatures, which is not that bad. Which is not bad at all. I mean, you can still copy Mutavault and stuff like that. I would snap copy a Mutavault in a heartbeat. And very easy to cast. Just one blue and 2 generic. So they made this as easy as possible. If there was a card that we got, well, copying Master of Waves is very difficult in 2020 because I don't even believe in Master of Waves anymore. Master of Waves is like really clunky, just super ultra clunky and very vulnerable. Black Bolt land got spoiled. What's this now? Agadim's Awakening. Return. So for it's triple black X. Return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of target creature cards that have a different converted mana cost X or less. Return from your graveyard to the battlefield any number of target creature cards that each have a different converted mana cost X or less. So for each X, I'm targeting a creature, and then each creature has to have a different converted mana cost. But it has to be equal to X or less. This is a very confusing card to like it's making me think really hard. So yeah, you can get if X is 3, you can get 3, 2, 1. If X is 2, you can get 2 and 1. But it has to be like X or less. It's really stupidly. I guess it's not the cleanest worded card in the world. Screw this card. Let's go back to Glasspool Mimic and all its applications. So I think this is a very easy card to splash in any creature-based deck, especially for Merfolk. And we can play. I mean, we've definitely played with what's it called? We've definitely played. In my opinion, I don't really think this card is going to see play. I think it's too expensive. Oh, but one interesting point here: a Bolt land or an extra shadow is probably good. I don't know how much room there is for Death Shadow to be playing with like non-basics in addition to their like shocks and fetches. But that is a good point in that giving Death Shadow the ability to bolt themselves these days for 3 with 1 land, even though they're already doing that with the fetches and the shocks, might be something. I don't know. Screw it. Maybe it's nothing. Or unless they replace their entire mana base. I don't think they can do that, though. With just bolt lands. It doesn't matter. Fetch into shock is doing just as much damage anyway. Okay, Glasspool Mimic. Let's talk about. I don't know. I'm actually pretty excited for. I don't look very excited, but now I'm getting really excited about this card. This actually looks really, really good. This looks really good. It's not going to be okay. The one thing I don't like about this card is it's not going to be good in like something like Simic Merfolk, which I have a lot of success with right now because Simic Merfolk has to curve out and be aggro. Although maybe I can afford 1 in that list. But for the most part, Simic Merfolk is like curve out, be aggro, and kill the opponent. Glasspool Mimic has to sacrifice the first turn of the game very, very often. You have to go like turn 1, put a land into play, tap, pass the turn, and then start getting your game going on turn 2. A lot to ask for in Modern, but still, the fact that this can be a creature late in the game, yeah, you can't play Lurrus Folk either, so there's a cost to that as well. But we'll see. We'll see how this card does. It's just funny. We just started utilizing Lurrus more and more just recently in the Merfolk deck. The fact that it does not copy opponent's creatures is a huge downside. That is true, but I mean, honestly, even with Phantasmal Image, I didn't copy my opponent's creatures that often. The most notable matchup that I did was in a Primeval Titan matchup because like digging my Tectonic Edges or my Mutavaults out of my deck was like a pretty big deal. And then like viling in Phantasmal Image, copying their Primeval Titan, getting Mutavaults, untapping and attacking for like 10 damage, and getting more Mutavaults was quite nice. Yeah, it doesn't die to a buff spell. Not that Phantasmal Image like did either. Well, anyway, okay, that's all I have. That's all the time we have for today for Decklist review and for Coffee and MTG. We threw in some like spoilers in the last few seconds. I guess that's how it's going to be in the next few days. As we do Coffee and MTG, spoilers are going to get revealed, and then we'll look at more spoilers in the tomorrow, because there's still going to be. Or when do the spoilers end? When do the spoilers end? When's the end of the spoilers? I think there's still going to be a few more days of spoilers. Glasspool Mimic, that was an impressive one. Nice art, too. Today is the end of the spoilers, so we're going to have the full list of Zendikar out today. Interesting. Well, anyway, thank you very much, everyone, for showing up today. Today was a great day. We had a really good conversation. Great, neat deck lists, and I hope really good feedback for those who did submit them today. And so we have some more stuff tomorrow. I think it's tomorrow because Command Zone still has stuff tomorrow. All right, so we're going to still have more discussion about the spoilers as they come out. And remember, just want to remind everyone that we're doing this at Mondays to Fridays, 9 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time, so earlier than usual. And it's going to be like this for the next few months, given my university schedule. So yeah, show up earlier. Got to get up earlier if you want your questions answered. You want to be part of the conversation here on twitch.tv/NikachuMTG. So thank you very much, everyone, for showing up again. We had a lot of fun, and I will see you at the next cup. Take care, and we'll see you next time.